Welcome to the Mantic Universe podcast. This is a short episode to share with you our experience with Dungeon Saga Origins, which we played during Chris's latest visit to Berlin just last weekend. And Chris and I recorded some live impressions from our Firefight narrative games, which you, dear listeners, will hear or have heard about already in another MUP episode. And as we were wrapping up that recording, we decided to also talk about our lovely evening with Dungeon Saga Origins. And we also invited my wife Sarah to jump in because she was playing the game with us. So Sarah, hi and welcome. We finally got you here, huh?
Woohoo! Hello. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm delighted to be here. I've gotten to see the pod behind the scenes since you and Chris started it almost 2 years ago now. You'll have to figure out what you want to do to celebrate in May. And it's fun to now get to be on this side of the microphone. So thank you.
Nice. So since this is your first time on the pod, do you want to tell our listeners a bit more about yourself, except that you're my wife?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah. I'm originally from the U.S., which maybe you can hear from my accent. Specifically, I'm from Kansas. Shout out to my fellow Midwesterners. As an adult, I've lived in a lot of different places. I was in the San Francisco Bay Area for a while. I was in Nairobi, Kenya. I lived in Paris for about 3 years where I accidentally found a French husband.
Oops.
Yes, it happens to the best of us. And now we've been in the Berlin area for the last 7 years, and we have our very spoiled Cocker Spaniel dog, Ripley.
She's baby dog.
She is. She's sleeping next to us on the couch as we record this. And fellow fans of the Alien films will recognize Ripley is named after Lieutenant Ellen Ripley, who is the main character in Alien. And
feminist icon.
Feminist sci-fi
fearsome warrior who would lick aliens in the face if she met them and wiggle her butt to a little dance.
Our dog is not the best character match for Ellen Ripley, but there's a am I allowed to say there's a fierce bitch in both of them?
I think it's fair to say.
I don't want to get banned or fired for cursing on.
What can I say? I curse all the time. You guys can see where the bad influence comes from.
So we like fierce bitches in this house.
Right. So maybe let's get back to the topic. Can you tell our audience how you got into tabletop?
Absolutely. It feels like it was the culmination of a really slow, long, organic process in my life. So I've loved fantasy since I could remember. My dad read my brother and I The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy twice when we were kids. I think the first time he started them when I was 4, and all I remember is having night terrors as a child about Shelob the spider.
Yeah, sounds like a good bedtime story. Good night.
Exactly. But somehow, despite that, the love of fantasy stuck. It expanded into a love of sci-fi as I got older, so I was one of those nerds when I was in middle school and high school in the late 90s and early 2000s who would dress up and cosplay and go to the midnight premieres with my dad and friends of the new Star Wars movies, the Lord of the Rings movies, the Harry Potter movies. That really was my jam. I read a lot. I read a lot of fantasy. I read a lot of sci-fi. I also love painting, and I love board games, card games, video games. And so mash those things together and you get tabletop.
Yeah, the most surprising part is why didn't you even start tabletop when you were 15, right? I mean, there might be reasons for another episode.
For another episode,
yeah.
So I got into tabletop because of you, Clem. We were already...
Oops.
Yes, exactly. I blame you for hooking me on this drug. We were living together back in 2016, and I know you've shared on the pod before you were sick. You were bored and kind of
trying to recover physically, and my brain was still running.
Yeah.
And one of my friends gave me a book that reminded me of Necromunda. I was like, oh, that was fun.
Yeah.
Is this tabletop thing still a thing? And that's how I plunged back.
Yeah.
So you were there already when I plunged back,
and
actually.
so he recruited me early on to play Necromunda games together.
We also played Kings of War. Maybe you don't remember it, but we played with cardboard cutouts. Kings of War, half scale.
I do remember. That's funny.
Second
I forgot
edition.
About that until you said it. We also did some bolt action. We would go together to our local gaming club around where we lived in France. I have really vivid memories of that gaming club. There was a picture of Napoleon hanging on the wall unironically.
Why would it be ironic? And a sword.
And a sword that somebody would use to
saber or something,
push their troops into battle.
Yeah, the officer saber on the wall.
Exactly.
Yeah. Might have been on the military base.
I didn't know if I was allowed to say that. It was definitely on a military base, and I had to show them ID to get in. Anyway, so I was recruited kind of from the start of your re-entry into tabletop. I remember we would ask your brother, like, hey, do you still have those minis that Clem gave
to the nephews?
Can we have those back? Like, are they using those?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was your thing, but I was kind of there getting pulled in at different times. And then I finally, I think it was early last year, decided that I wanted to take the plunge and construct my own 750-point ambush army for Kings of War Northern Alliance.
Right.
And so I've been having fun very slowly building those. Part of the impetus was I do a lot of watercolor painting, and I also watch Clem paint minis a lot. We listen to audiobooks while we do it together. And somehow in the course of talking about bases, I got this idea that if we watercolor painted and used then resin pours, we could make a cool kind of icy lake base. And so then from there, I decided, okay, I'll do a Northern Alliance army that goes with the bases.
Right, yeah.
So it's been a slow process, and now as of this past weekend, I have played my first official game with my Northern Alliance ambush army against an opponent who was not you, which is a milestone.
Yeah, that's a big first, and it's great.
Yeah.
And definitely not the last. And but well, maybe with all of that, we should get back to how our game of Dungeon Saga Origins went. And I think you'll be able to tell that we had a lot of fun.
We had so much fun, and if anybody wants photographic evidence, there's a really fun picture of Clem and Chris just laughing their asses off, posted on the MUP Facebook page on either January 25th or 26th, depending on your time zone.
Right. I don't even remember what we were talking about precisely at that time, but we laughed our asses off almost all evening.
Yeah.
We messed up the rules and everything, but anyway.
It was fun.
We will tell you more about it just now with the previous recording.
Hi, this is Alessio Cavatore, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. So many universes, so little time.
Right, yeah.
We played Dungeon Saga Origins, Clem.
We did.
Which I forgot, but we played before, apparently.
Yeah, we played, because I think I was visiting in Frankfurt right around when the Kickstarter was delivered. And we were literally playing on the Saturday, and then doorbell and your package with Dungeon Saga Origins arrived.
This rings a bell.
That's what we're going to do tonight. And then we played Mission 1, I guess, a year ago or so, right? When it arrived. And so we played Mission 1 again.
But it was fine for me, because I didn't remember a thing. So
I had forgotten the rules, I'd forgotten everything. So Leon was tasked with reading the rules while we were eating pizza. And Sarah was also here, stayed in the evening. And so we ended up playing with the AI. So I was very mad at you guys, because my favorite thing is to play the Dungeon Master and just try to, see confusion and tensions within the player team, but I was attributed the dwarf of all things.
Yes, you were last to the table, so you got stuck with the dwarf.
Yeah, it can happen. And so we had you as your favorite person in Panithor,
executive door opener,
right? Leon played the elf Madriga, I think.
Yeah.
It's called.
Brought a lot of arrows with him.
Yeah, and then Sarah, you played the Conan the Barbarian, Olaf,
Camel Puncher.
Yes, and then I did the dwarf. And but I also still played the skeletons whenever there was
well,
it would have been more appropriate if you had played the troll, because Clem's job was to just troll everybody the whole game.
I mean, a job he takes very seriously.
We also caught him cheating twice on dice rolls.
Not intentionally.
Oh no, very very purposefully changing rolls to 6s when he thought no one was looking. And
So I suck at it, right?
What I loved about it as well, Clem, is Sarah was like, Clem, did you just cheat? And you were like, no. And then you thought about it and you were like, oh no, yeah, I did. And I'm pretty sure once you cheated was in our benefit and once was against our benefit.
he cheated in favor of the skeletons at least once.
But Clem, is it because the inside the dwarf there is a skeleton? Was that the reason? There's a skeleton ready to ride.
I think there's a baby troll, Sarah. There's a baby troll.
It's not a baby troll.
He's
That's a
pregnant with
big troll. And we were joking about last time we played it, Clem. Your trolling I find hilarious.
Right.
But someone was getting quite upset.
Way too serious
You were
about
taking it way too seriously, which I can sort of understand. But at the same time, I was finding it all the more funny because they had absolutely
It had
no
another
sense.
layer of
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. But this time, I think we were more or less more on board with your trolling.
I think everyone
it
was pretty
very
much on the same
enjoyable.
page.
I think it was you and I that pissed people off because, Chris, we were off trying to open all the doors, open all the chests, and search all the rooms. And at one point, Leon was like, fuck this, I'm going rogue.
Oh, he did.
You ran forward.
I haven't got time for this.
Time
I
for
got
this
stuff to do.
bullshit. So he ran forward and opened a door, and there were a ton of skeletons there. And we were like, well, that's called consequences meet actions.
What did you learn? But the issue with playing, I mean, I'm assuming it'll change as he powers up. But the problem with playing Sucky Danelor, who everyone hates, if that is indeed, I feel like he's getting his name wrong. You only get quite a limit. I think you only get 6 spells.
Yeah, and they're
right?
one time use per game.
And they're one use per game. So it's all well and good me going fireball, but I can only do that once in the whole game. And we
To be fair, you killed a bunch of skeletons. It's like this whole house goes in, fluffs the dice.
had a
Or I roll
tactic.
good dice for the skeleton. and then it's like, fuck this. And then you jump in and then quick, you poke the skeleton and kill it.
true.
So I stabbed them through the eye socket with my wand.
Yeah, exactly.
So I kept doing
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
Why
ganging
bother learning
against-
magic at all when you've got that kind of skill?
Absolutely. Ganging on the skeletons actually is quite
Yeah.
powerful in the game, I think.
They lose a dice if you have more than 2 people on your team within their front arc or
Right.
around the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's how we did it.
And we already start with more dice than the skeletons. That's the thing we've got going
Right.
for us. So to
Yeah.
reduce it by 1, it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
absolutely.
But it was. I really like. I mean, it was obviously one of the goals of the game. It's a game you can not play for a year. Bully someone we don't know into learning the rules and then showing us how to play it.
Yeah.
But you can pick it up and play it.
And
You
we probably
don't
did
need-
things wrong,
Yes,
but who cares?
But you're having a lovely,
Right?
you're having a lovely time.
Exactly,
It
yeah.
works. It works enough,
Yeah.
right?
We did it without a dungeon master. We used the app to tell us where the skeletons were.
Yeah, where the
we
rules
wanted to go.
are.
Works horribly on my phone, but when Clem got
Yeah.
his laptop out, it worked
Yeah,
great. Actually,
the laptop
it was good.
Was fine. And then how you move the skeletons is quite obvious anyway.
Yeah.
And we'll just roll a dice when there's 2 options and you don't want to decide for them. You just want to let the dice decide. And I think compared to the original Dungeon Saga, also having everything on just 2 square tiles and then with some items you put on top,
absolutely.
makes it so easy to set it up. And
I will say one thing I miss about the original Dungeon Saga is that when you killed a skeleton, it became a pile of bones and
Right.
had the option to reanimate. And
Yeah.
I missed that element of surprise. Maybe it's because we were lucky. Maybe it's because we were cheating. But I didn't feel like there was any moment where we were actually at threat of losing the mission.
No.
yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's also mission 1
It's
out
the-
of
Yeah.
40.
Fair.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. But you're right, Sarah. There wasn't really a sense of peril, even when
Yeah. I mean,
Leon opened that door and went, oh, flip. It was more of a kind of a hilarious, right, we'll come and get you kind
Yeah.
of a situation.
Yeah, I think you could still have the pile of bones in Dungeon Saga Origins. You just decide if you do only 1 damage to a normal skeleton, then turns into a pile of bone, and that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think
But also, let's play a few more scenarios before we start changing the rules.
right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I think we've kind of touched on that I'm really impressed by is a lot of the time with these massive board games like Descent and these dungeon
Yeah.
crawlers, think you need a small table space, but then it grows and grows and grows. You need to rearrange everything because you realise, oh flip, we need loads of table space.
Right.
And with this, we really didn't. Like there was the board, which was very compact.
Yeah.
And then there was just a few decks of cards, the encounters cards, but we didn't have endless stuff all over the table. It works really, really nicely. So it's I think the game does exactly what you want it to.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's a lot of fun, although Dan Law, or whatever his name is, sucks.
I think two things is we need to play it a bit more often, and I need to get them painted, and it will be even better. But yeah, no, it's already really fun like this.
But I think it would be good, Clem, if just Saturday nights when we have a weekend, when either of us visits, we just that's Dungeon Saga night, because it's the perfect after play. Because actually, I would have loved to play a game of Ambush with Sarah, and I was offered. But actually, by that point, my brain was fried. It was like, do you know, all the measuring, the counting of the dice. It's been a long day of gaming. But Dungeon Saga, I'm up for that. That's
you can
fun.
just be part of the group, and
It's also a good starter drug. We take games like this to family reunions. You can pull in people who have no experience.
Right.
With
You can just sit at the table. You've never played a game like this, and yet you can right away be involved and do stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. Brilliant. Which I think was exactly the idea for the game, right? I think it's absolutely on point in that regard. Super. Right. And Sarah, it's not edited yet, but you're going to be on the podcast.
Yay!
Yay!
Thanks for having me.